All right, I've got 6 p.m. It's September 19th, 2024. I'll call the monthly Utility Commission meeting to order. Matt, if you could take a roll call for us when you're ready.
Tom?
Here.
Rule?
Here.
Handler?
Here.
Curtis?
Here.
Beckman is absent. Finkler is absent. And Hammer is absent.
All right, we do have a quorum. This meeting has been noticed in accordance with state statutes and local ordinances. The next item is to approve the agenda as presented. Unless there's any alterations or deletions, I'll take a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second that motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as presented. Any discussion on the motion? If none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Agenda is approved. I don't think we have anyone here for public comment this evening. You'll be speaking during the agenda item, that's my assumption? Okay. And then next is the consent agenda. On the consent agenda, we have the approval of the August 15th meeting minutes, the utilities outage report, and then the financial reports. Are there any questions on any items in the consent agenda? If there are no questions, I'll take a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I will move to approve tonight's consent agenda.
I'll second that motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as presented. Any discussion on the motion? If there's no discussion, we need a roll call on this, Matt.
Curtis?
Aye.
Handler?
Aye.
Rule?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye. Consent agenda is approved. Then we'll move on to unfinished business, which is number 4, HVAC PM with time and material or full coverage contract comparison with Bassett Mechanical. We have a representative here this evening to go through this with us. Who wants to kick this off? Jacob?
Yes, this was brought up at the last meeting. There was some confusion due to the amount of detail that Jason provided us. At the request of myself, I know you guys like to read through the stuff, but it was a lot to comprehend with one meeting. So he is here to present an abbreviated version of the material he has previously provided. And then I also provided, as requested, the receipts that I could find for the past 3 years that were provided to us by the vendors that we have used. There were a couple of vendors that did not provide the receipts that we requested. So the totals that we have spent for the past 3 years, there is also more that is also there that we just don't account for because we don't have receipts. So I hand it over to Jason and let him do his thing. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Jacob. Thanks for having me. Would it be all right if I sat here since I'll need to drive a bit? Let me start off. My name is Jason Erksleben. I've been with Bassett Mechanical almost 5 years now. I am a senior maintenance sales engineer for them. I focus on consulting with companies, corporations, larger groups, cities to help them with their maintenance needs on larger mechanical systems. Before I dive too deep into this, I do know that some of it is not completely fresh and you have some information. So I always like to start off by asking, are there any questions that anyone would absolutely like answered along the way? Or I have a total overview as well, and we can kind of just do soup to nuts and cover as much as I can and help you learn as much as possible.
I don't see any specific questions yet.
Okay, wonderful. Anyone familiar with Bassett Mechanical, just from previous work experience? Anything of the sort? Just curious? Okay, wonderful. Well, I will go through here and just talk through a little bit about who we are and what we do, and then get into the specifics. We've been in business almost 90 years. We're owned and operated, a female-owned company by the Bassetts since 1936. We work with some very household names. If you've had a piece of cheese in the last 30 years, 40 years, then you probably had a piece of cheese that Bassett had something to do with. We do ammonia refrigeration as well. So we take care of companies such as Kraft, Heinz, ConAgra Foods, Bird's Eye Foods, any of these names you've seen. And I'll get into other companies. We're headquartered out of Kaukauna. We have an office as well in Madison. We've been in Madison almost 30 years now at this point. And our main focus as a business is maintenance. It was once said to me that maintenance is the fountain of which all good things grow. We try to establish good standing maintenance relationships, and then with that, we typically only work with customers who have maintenance agreements with us. And so larger projects, construction work, et cetera, those are all maintenance agreement type customers, but we try to foster that relationship and then grow from there. It's been a much more predictable business model for Bassett over the last almost 100 years when you can establish these long-term relationships through maintenance, which is an ongoing agreement year to year versus a large project that may or may not come each year, right? So flipping through industrial refrigeration, HVAC is what we're talking about, and then other areas that could apply to the wastewater treatment plant would be HVAC and PLC controls for the systems, metal fabrication. We have a full piping division as well if there's ever expansions at the plant that we're able to also facilitate, and then of course service. One thing we pride ourselves upon, and it's actually required to be an ammonia refrigeration company, is to have a stellar safety rating. Some facilities, they won't even let you in the door if you don't have a certain safety rating for incident rates. So we are an extremely safe company. We target 2-hour response times for all of our speed and response for service calls. So if there is ever an event that you need us out, and I think Jacob can attest to it, that whenever they've called, we've been there in a very reasonable time. We have over 100 technicians throughout the company. In the Madison larger area, almost 30 technicians. So we are very strong, and those are just service technicians who are just doing maintenance and spot calls to respond. Past that, we are very focused on customers. Our company motto is "We answer to you," and creating customers for life. So we are constantly focused on your happiness, your satisfaction, and making sure that the plants run as efficiently as possible. And then, of course, with the knowledge and experience, all of our technicians go through a 5-year apprenticeship, so they practically have a doctorate in HVAC by the time they're out of it. So they're very knowledgeable and know exactly what they're doing. So partnerships, just in Columbus, we've been working with American Packaging for almost 10 years. We have a technician who's practically on staff there. He's there almost every day. Eggers Imprints is another company we've just started working with a couple of years ago. IPC and Enerpac. Enerpac is another large metal fabrication company that we've worked with along with service projects over the years. Wastewater treatment plants has been a bit of a specialty for me. City of Beaver Dam, City of Sun Prairie, City of Janesville, City of Portage, Delafield, Mukwonago, Fond du Lac, Winneconne. Those are just some. I've worked with Jefferson, Fort Atkinson, Lake Mills. So we are very experienced in servicing these types of facilities. And I can provide references as well to other members of those communities if you need be to attest to our experience. So any questions thus far? Okay. So what we're looking for ultimately is an HVAC provider to partner with to start taking care of the wastewater plant operations and the maintenance. And we're juggling between the idea of possibly doing a pre-planned time and material cost or doing what we call a fixed cost maintenance program, which I'll get into. Some things we found at the plant, just to share any additional items with you. The equipment, it is original. This is very typical of wastewater plants too, that, they are older facilities. There are not many new wastewater plants that I visited. They just kind of expand as you go through. A couple of the units we went to, this is, and again, no slight on the in-house team, but because they have a lot to do. The way we look at wastewater plants is they're wastewater operators. They are not HVAC operators and service technicians, and so their job is to make sure that the wastewater plant is running, not necessarily the HVAC equipment that is helping that plant operate. And so a couple broken or worn belts throughout the facility, rusting and abandoned units. These are exhaust fans. Obviously, when you have caustic gases that are in wastewater facilities, exhaust air and makeup air is most important among all things. So you can see here this unit. I know it's a bit difficult to see, but the pulley itself is rusted out. This unit will very likely need to be replaced. Another example, of another exhaust fan. And then another one, this is actually not to throw a contractor under the bus by any means, but these are the exhaust caps for the brand new boilers that you guys had just put in. And these exhaust caps, they're missing the mushroom lid that goes over the top that's actually allowing moisture materials, snow, rain, et cetera, to fall into your exhaust venting for your brand new boilers. That probably cost you a good couple $100,000. And so we do this not to throw anyone under the bus, to bring attention to it and to say that these are things we notice and to make sure we stay on top of them. Please.
One of the things that I've noticed, doing a little bit more investigation of failures that we've had in the plant, one of our most toxic, dangerous environments is the bar screen room, where the influent wastewater comes into the plant at first and is separated, and it's in a lower basement. That system is controlled by floats and the PLC in the MCC room. We could never find where the thermostat was for that system because it kept failing. You guys were out a couple months ago to try to help us figure out how to fix it. Well, come to find out that breaker for that HVAC unit is actually tied to the PLC and the actual control box for all the equipment in that building. So the bar screen would fail, it would kick out the HVAC. In turn, if the HVAC failed, it would kick out of our level sensors, which would cause an overflow of our bar screens. So that right there is creating a severely hazardous environment for our operators to go into, because we do not have building monitoring gas systems. So we have to carry a personal unit, and you only have one person coming in during an on-call period. So you're going into an environment that you don't know is going to be noxious, knock you out, and you could be laying there until someone comes in the morning. Which is another reason why having someone come in and help us with these HVAC issues is because if we have to reconfigure an MCC room due to doubling up or tripling up buckets for the equipment, that's extremely costly. Not to mention, it's extremely dangerous for our operators and for anybody that's going to be working in that environment. So it's just one of the things that, I've worked with Bassett in the past at the city of Brookfield. Their safety is exemplary, and they do work the right way. They try to fix it as best they can the first time so they're not being called back in. And situations like this, like we see the vent, that's carelessness, honestly. That's something that you would see at your house and be like, well, why didn't you put that cap on there? Now I have water going into my exhaust and it's flooding out my unit. Oops. Well, that was installed last year, so it'd be just fall of last year.
Have we contacted the contractor to come out to fix it?
They were actually out to reinstall the water system that they tied into that, because they were using non-city water into the boiler. They were using our plant effluent, so we had to re-tie in the city water into the boiler to actually have it work efficiently for the water softening system. So they were out there numerous times. They've been out there numerous times since. And, yeah, they haven't seemed to repair it. Do we owe them money? No, we have paid them up front.
Maybe we should pay them.
Yeah. Well, this is one of the things that, stuff like that, you go by the wayside because we're not climbing up on top of buildings every day. We're trying to run around and take care of what's in the sewers and what's in the plant. HVAC, again, is not these guys' forte. These are trained professionals. We're just maintenance and operators and skilled technicians in biochemistry and chemistry. So it helps to have an extra pair of eyes and actual skilled trades on site to help us with more than just HVAC when we need it. So I'll give it back to you. Sorry.
And to say, one thing we've caught on with a lot of these boilers, you can extend the life of a boiler tremendously by controlling the type of water that's going into it. And that's not just to say, if and when we were to get on site, we would do a full water analysis to ensure that it's not just city water. City water isn't good enough anymore. These are precious environments where you nearly need to be running reverse osmosis water with additional treatment for chemicals to prevent algae growth, having any caustic materials, any metal findings, et cetera, that we would go through and make sure those boilers, because again, you invested a lot of money into those. The police department at Beaver Dam was one scenario where they were running untreated, unsoftened water, and they got 10 years out of their boilers. You should get 25 at least. And so, or more, truthfully, I mean, we've seen some boilers. We have a full coverage agreement, as we'll get into, on a boiler in a church in Madison. It's 98 years old. It's a steam boiler, and we have a full coverage agreement, so we'll get into that. So here's our goal, and what we are attempting to do is budget unpredictable costs and mitigate the risk. When we have these full coverage agreements in place, what we're essentially looking at is this bottom flat line. Could it be a bit more than what you would be spending each year? Potentially, but you are a nonprofit entity. You are not printing widgets and money that you could just come up with funding to pay in the event that suddenly that line decided to spike. And so the idea with this is, first off, can we put a full coverage agreement in place for what you're already spending? For example, the Contemporary Art Museum in Madison, they had an HVAC budget of $37,000 a year. We were able to put a full coverage agreement together for $34,000 a year. And not only does that cover all of their HVAC maintenance, but it covers all of the repairs, all of the spot calls, anything that could potentially come up 24/7, 365 at 2 a.m. on Christmas morning. And what that's protecting them from is, again, there could be a year where suddenly the repairs are only $5,000 for the entire year, but it's willing to cover the risk of that additional amount because the next year it could very well be $50,000. So this is essentially, we're capping our risk and ensuring that that line doesn't spike over the cost of what we're anticipating the HVAC budget to be, is what. This is very much a financial sell. This is not a product that we look to push on people. We track the dollars every year, and if we get in year 2 and year 3 and we see that the repairs are only totaling up to, say, $20,000 per year, then we're going to sit down with you at our Tier 1 meeting and say, you know what, I think we back it down to a maintenance agreement. We've got the plant in good running and working condition, and now we can trust that we can cover these costs and we can prevent these things from happening. The fear is, with the plant as it currently sits, we actually don't know what kind of shape it's in, but unfortunately, it would appear that the maintenance has been deferred. So in these first couple of years, we're probably going to see additional costs when we first get in and start to look at this as a surgeon would. But after the first year and then the second year, we like to think that those costs will flatline, and then we can move to something that we don't have to hedge our risk on, if that makes good sense. Versus as this red line is spiking and those costs come and surprise us. So this is extremely small. You do have this in your email. This is sample tasking of the work that we do on the units. If we decide not to go full coverage, if you decide to move forward with Bassett, but just on a maintenance only, and then you pay for the repairs on a T&M basis, time and materials, this tasking list is exactly the same. We maintain the units, whether it is full coverage or it is maintenance only. The difference is when we walk up to a motor and it starts clicking from bearing noise, if it's on a full coverage agreement, we're just going to swap out that motor to prevent it from failing, which is potentially going to prevent a call at 3 in the morning to him for us to come and replace this motor that just suddenly failed and now an MCC room is overheating. So it's very proactive, very preventative, where we can do these replacements on the spot. And the beauty of it is your maintenance agreement cost at $37,000. When we replace that $4,000 motor, your maintenance agreement cost is still $37,000. It's capped at that top amount. You are a production facility as well, and so the city, you have a duty, of course, to make sure that this place is running effectively, and that is where Bassett Mechanical specializes in production facilities, pharmaceutical, biotech, healthcare, places that if they go down for even an hour, it may cost them $100,000. And so that's where this fixed cost option is pennies on the dollar compared to the cost of lost productivity, if you will. Not exactly the same if the wastewater plant goes down for some reason, but if an MCC room did overheat, for example, it could suddenly cost you a substantial amount of money. Our process, so that we're working through and making sure we're creating a really strong baseline. When we come in, we will do a full startup meeting with the team, introduce our service manager, the dedicated project manager who would handle any repairs or larger projects, primary technician, who's going to be the one mostly on site, secondary technician, who will be the other one on site doing secondary work, so less involved, more filter changes, coil cleanings, things as they're learning. They're an apprentice type technician underneath your primary, who is a journeyman level technician. Myself, the service manager, and the area supervisor as well, technician, who is one of our more senior technicians who will be out and occasionally helping on other projects as well. We are, as I like to joke, if anyone's a Grey's Anatomy fan, we're a teaching hospital, we're a teaching mechanical contractor. We're always evolving with our technicians. That startup meeting will go through, and I've put a copy of the condition report. It's going to be an Excel document that has a list of repairs on the left side of your folder. This example of a condition report is something that the wastewater plant would receive when we get on site. Now, this is really important for this plant. We will come through, and on our very first maintenance, we will do a full inspection and report card, essentially, a health check of every unit that is on the inventory list for the maintenance agreement. And then with that, find anything that's wrong. What's it going to take to fix it? What's the cost going to be to repair it? So you'll get a full report card essentially of what the entire wastewater plant looks like and all of the current happenings and situation of each unit. So with that, with the full coverage agreement, we'll cover 10% of the startup costs for the maintenance agreement. So it's a $37,000 full coverage agreement. We'll cover $3,700 of repairs on that initial findings list. And the truth is, that's because we just had you agree to give us almost $40,000. We don't now want to go back and nickel and dime you for another 5 and 10. That's not what this is about. This is about creating a partnership and helping to work together. And we want to make sure that for us to be able to do our job well, when we come on and we find all of these things, we want to fix everything. Because once we fixed everything, now we know the plant is working and running very well. And anything from that point after we fixed everything is under full coverage and full warranty, and we will take care of it as if it is our own equipment, and we are responsible for it, because essentially we are. If a motor fails, it now comes out of our pocket. I'll pause there for a moment. Any questions on that?
When you originally started, you said you're looking for a partner to do the maintenance? Did I hear that correctly?
We look at these maintenance agreements as partnerships between us and the customer.
Okay, so you're not looking for a third party to
No,
do, okay.
no. This is all between you and us.
I have a question about this initial inventory list. Jacob,
Please.
are you confident we have a full list of the current equipment?
Actually, Bassett's already been on site and pretty much put together the list that we
Okay.
have, because we
Good.
did not have one.
So.
Thank you.
The larger, if I may, the larger stapled copy on the other side of the folder is the maintenance agreement, and in that is the inventory list. Myself and Jeremy Roll walked the plant, then went through the MCC controls on the computers, took that home with me, and essentially put that inventory list together for you. So it should cover everything that we would essentially need to take care of.
Essentially, what they're gonna help us do is wastewater has not assetted any of their equipment ever. It's always been run till it fails, replace. They will start the asset management program that we will then build into with everything else that we put into that facility. So all of our pumps, motors, electrical components, everything will be assetted and built into a program that we can start tracking the life cycle of everything like you would your vehicle.
Is that exclusive to the full coverage contract?
That is not.
Okay.
We will do that even for the regular agreement.
Great, thank you.
And with your project specialist, so something they will do, when we say form a partnership, this is not a scenario where we do work, you give us money, but additionally where your project manager will go through all the inventory, and after this condition report, will make a list of maybe your five worst assets, and a cost that, because these have life expectancies, we're going to have to anticipate replacing them, and that is then your job in this room to decide where that money comes from when the time comes to do that. He'll go through and put that list together of maybe your 5 worst units and the cost it's going to take to do it and when you're going to have to. So now you'll have a constant running list every few years of the units that you're going to have to come up with capital dollars to replace. So we want to be a financial partner to help predict those costs. Another important thing to say with that cost is, let's say, for example, and this is a great scenario, all of your boilers on site, which is really, and then your larger air handlers on site, those are really your larger costs that you've now taken care of and replaced already. But let's say, for example, the very first picture I showed you was the air handler for the main building. That's the only room that has air conditioning, the only building that has air conditioning, cooling in the plant. It's very old, and the units up on the roof are also very old. However, they're functioning, and so we will take care of them. Let's say, for example, though, that we're out fixing it, it's constantly causing problems, it's not cooling the building well, and you say, you know what, we need to get this thing replaced. The lab for the water treatment isn't staying at the temperature we need it to be. If that unit fails and it needs a compressor in the unit, and that compressor is $8,000 and it's $20,000 to replace the whole unit, we will cost share the cost of the repair with you. So the $20,000 unit will give you $8,000 towards that repair to help replace the unit. And now you'll only be responsible for $12,000 instead of the $20,000 to replace it. So I've covered this page. This is technician coverage. You can see every marker here, small on the map, also on the nice printed copy for why to work with Bassett. That copy of the map is also on there, but we have very good coverage in the southern market, so we'll be able to respond well. And as I've said, we practically have someone on staff at American Packaging, so it's rare they can't take away from there and go to another site. I sent you a copy of this, and so I can play the video, but I figure you can watch it in your own time if you'd like. This is that service equipment replacement plan I talked about with the project specialist who's going to give you an idea of what those upcoming costs are come over the years. This is a good visual for the full coverage agreement and the comparison. So the CPM2, this is our customized professional maintenance agreement. The CPM1 is essentially just a test and inspect. We come on site and look at things and see what we find. CPM2 is a true maintenance agreement, and that is the semi-annual maintenance agreement option that we have also presented. So basically anything in the dark blue is what's covered under that agreement, and then the light blue is excluded from that. The GPM agreement and GPM plus agreement is what we're talking about. The difference between a plus and a GPM. On our agreement, and you'll see here in the writing, it says movable and maintainable components. The only difference between a GPM and a GPM plus is on a plus, we will cover coils and heat exchangers. Coils and heat exchangers are two of your larger, more expensive repairs on units, and they're not really maintainable, but we're trying to cover those items. If you do good maintenance, then those items can typically be, it can be preventable to have them fail. Ways that heat exchangers would fail is they would over time get old, they would rust, and then eventually they would leak carbon dioxide into the unit and then into the area where somebody is working. And so it then becomes dangerous and you have to replace that. Jacob, I need to actually check because now I'm thinking that, may I just take a look at one of the agreements just quickly? Just this version here. Let's see. Okay, yes. So this is a combo agreement. So essentially, to explain and get a little more complicated, but hopefully not too much, to keep costs down, the wastewater plant has a large amount of hot water unit heaters, which essentially the boilers create hot water, they run to hot water unit heaters, and then a fan just blows through a coil with hot water inside of it and heats that area. They don't fail a lot. And so there's really not a reason to have full coverage on something like that because they don't really fail and they're not very expensive to repair. And so it's kind of like putting car insurance on my son's electric ride-on car. in a way. It doesn't make good sense. And so that's where you'll see on the inventory list where there are certain ones that are highlighted one color and another. The ones that are highlighted as non-covered items for full coverage are those hot water unit heaters. And then the other ones are backflow preventers, which require inspection on an annual basis. They typically don't fail either. They just need to be inspected. So there's no reason to put essentially covered risk on those type of units. So that's to explain that. Otherwise, though, in the GPM Plus agreement, if one of the boilers, for example, we would never do this. Let's say, for example, the cap is missing on those boilers. It would be too tough to tell. We'll get the cap replaced. But let's say, for example, that water over time got inside of that and rusted out that heat exchanger. That happened in the police department at the city of Beaver Dam. That heat exchanger failed, so then we'd need to replace that heat exchanger. That heat exchanger is covered under the agreement, and so we would replace that heat exchanger. But on a heat exchanger on a boiler like that, you could be looking anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000. So it's a significant cost. So the reason I was saying we wouldn't do something is I'm here sitting saying the cap is missing. Nobody else at Bassett knows the cap is missing. So we'll get it replaced and not worry about it. A breakdown again of just what is covered. Difficult to read from here, but essentially anything that is movable and maintainable. This is basically an example of some costs. This is on a rooftop unit, which you actually don't have any rooftop units, but a blower motor is no different than a motor on an exhaust fan, $2,500 to $4,000 for a cost to replace something like that. So you can see how when you have to go through and replace these. More about Bassett in there. So let me pause there. Clear as mud, I'm sure. Any questions thus far? Essentially, Jacob came to me and said that something that you would like to do is potentially put a time and materials program together, which is around $9,000, and then also have $30,000 essentially budgeted for repair and replacement. And what I'm suggesting is that we would be able to put the full coverage together for less than that amount. And then where you have that time and materials program only, it does not cover you from the risk of something going above that budget amount, and the full coverage agreement would.
I wasn't at the last meeting, so I apologize. I wasn't part of the conversation, and I didn't get a chance to watch the meeting, so I have a couple questions.
Sure, please.
We have this list here, which is the equipment condition report that you put together.
Apologize for misleading. A different wastewater plant's condition report.
I noticed, okay, that's
Okay.
Sun Prairie.
Yes.
Okay,
That's
that's
just
an
an
example.
I just wanted to provide an
Okay,
example for you.
because I
guys.
noticed that list was shorter than this list.
Yes,
Okay, so then all of the green ones, you're saying would be like the unit heater fans?
correct.
That are maintenance only, not under full coverage?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And the other question, I guess, is when we look at this plan here, as far as the three different plans that are put on here, what is the main difference between the GLP maintenance program and the combo GPM program?
Sure. Great question. So the GLP agreement is actually that we will build in equipment replacement into the program. The reason I don't suggest that is because you've already paid for a lot of replacements. There's not a lot of units on site there that need to be replaced that are going to be large ticket items. You've done all 5 boilers, you've done the 2 major air handlers. So really your major risk of replacement cost is the cooling equipment on building 20, the main office. Those are residential style units that are essentially like your house. Now they're still not cheap. They're $10,000 to $15,000 probably, but nothing compared to the other. I didn't print this off because it had some privileged information, but the boilers at the Beaver Dam Police Department, when we replaced them, that was $100,000 to do 2 boilers. That's a lot of exposure, whereas a residential style unit is not so much. So I wouldn't suggest paying the additional money to cover big unit replacement, because we don't have a lot of big units to replace.
Yeah, the next major project we're gonna have at the wastewater plant is gonna be the biosolids processing. So that large building in the middle of the plant is most likely gonna have some serious modifications done to it, which are most likely gonna change the air handling requirements of that upstairs and the downstairs. Also, to increase our ability to dry our cake as it sits in the hangar, we're most likely gonna try and put in some kind of fanned, air handling system in there, so we can keep the door closed, keep the humidity out of the building, and bugs and birds out of the building, so we can actually keep that building drier. And one of the maintenance practices we're gonna do is we're gonna start actually turning that cake more often, so that it dries like a compost pile. The other thing is the two domes for the clarifiers, the air handling units on those are inoperative, as well as the air handling unit on the extended aeration basin, which is our aerobic digester. Both of those systems can be low oxygen environments, so those are something that will need to be replaced with those fans, and possibly upgrading the HVAC in those facilities. Pending any improvements to the plant, it might not meet current code, just so you all know.
So can I assume that what the ask was at the last meeting was this, but you put this special price together for more coverage? Is that,
So my recommendation is this: the very first year, you're going to have some costs. It's very typical when we get into a facility that hasn't been maintained at the level we maintain them. There's going to be costs. So doing a full coverage agreement in the first year doesn't make good sense to have you pay full coverage on units you're just ripping out and replacing, right? Once we fix, and maybe I see exhaust fans as being a lot of the units we'll have to replace. Past that, and those are going to be $3,000 to $5,000 ticket items to replace those. Past that, once those are replaced, you still have a lot of those on site. After we get through the first year and we've done that work, then switch to a full coverage maintenance agreement. And now basically we've taken the first year to invest the time to make everything work and run properly. Now we've got it where we need it to be, and now we're putting this full coverage agreement together. Those costs are still going to sneak up on us because it's not as though you just work on something for 1 year and things just fall right into place. But the idea with this, and I said it to Jacob in the meeting, was when I met with him previously, year one, we do exactly the plan that you would like to do, which is the maintenance agreement, get through, PM, find the repairs, fix the repairs, spend those dollars to replace it, and then following that in years 2 and 3, put the full coverage in place, and then reassess. After years 2 and 3, and we've got the facility under our belt, and it's running well, and we've fixed and replaced and covered the risk and taken care of those things for those couple of rocky years as we're getting our feet under us, sit back down, take a look. If we've spent what would essentially be, and we will track all of these costs, and you also will have access to track all of these costs, and I'll show you an example of that. Track all of those costs. If we've spent what would have been $60,000 over the last 2 years, you guys are going to say, we're not leaving this program ever because it's going to keep you at the $37,000, right? If we get through year one, we spend 50 grand maybe in fixing and repairs and so on, then the next year it's 40 grand, then the next year it's 25. Maybe we look at it and say, let's just try the maintenance because we've seen these costs trend downwards. But what we are trying to do is while we are going through and making everything right again, you're going to be investing a lot of dollars in that. Let's shelter anything else from getting above that cost threshold is the idea.
I'm still a little confused only
Please.
by the language because you're saying things like full coverage.
Yes.
I don't see the words full coverage anywhere here.
Yes, I'm so sorry about
Yep.
that too. And what's funny is that we were part of a franchise group 30 years ago that helped service companies grow their service business, and this was their lingo. And then we essentially outgrew them. We were 30 times larger than all the companies inside this group, but we kept their lingo. And I was honestly fighting to say, can we just make it full coverage and maintenance only? It is a lot more clear. CPM, customized professional maintenance. GPM, essentially just think about the C and the G. G is guaranteed professional maintenance.
So that would be the full coverage
The
program.
full coverage agreement.
Okay.
Correct. So, and I'm so sorry for the confusion.
That's all right.
We have 30-day out clauses built into our agreements. If we get into year 2 and you think this isn't making sense, we need a 30-day notice and we will change it or we will back out of it as well. this is part of the partnership. We need to do our job, and you need to feel we're doing right by you to stay in this partnership. We don't want to feel as though you're forced to stay in it. And let's say in the event that we get in and we do a cost share and we replace a large unit and it costs us some money, but then shortly after you change your mind and say, we'll just find some way to make whole, maybe to share the cost of what we paid into it and then go from there. Because we'll build this agreement, if you would like and prefer, we can do it on a monthly basis. We can do it on a semi-annual and a quarterly, so you won't feel as though it's not like you have to pay $30,000 up front and now you're in it and you're stuck. You can do it on a monthly basis and really take it in stride, and if you feel you're not getting what you need out of it, then you have an out from there.
The last question I have then is on the semi-annual maintenance program, the total cost shows the $9,036 plus the $30,000. Is that $9,000 the base cost for your preventative maintenance, parts and labor, and then the $30,000 is a pool for time and materials work that would need to be done through that year?
Precisely as requested through
Okay.
your team, to my understanding.
Okay, but why is the combo GPM program 37? It's cheaper actually for more
Yes.
coverage.
That is based off of algorithms. So
Okay.
we have, over the last 30 years, just collected data on what a 200 horsepower hot water boiler would cost to run and maintain and repair. And so over the years, all of this data has been aggregated and basically put forth that it's going to cost X amount of dollars. Well, all I do essentially is take the inventory, put the age of the equipment, the size of the equipment, the type of the equipment into it, and then it gives us this cost of what we think it would be. We're trusting that that algorithm is correct. Obviously, if I put it in incorrectly or the algorithm gets it wrong and that unit is much more expensive, then it can catch up to us. But when Jacob had asked to put that type of the semi-annual maintenance plus the $30,000 budget, my wheels started to say, I wonder if we could do a full coverage agreement for that cost. So then I went back to my system, plugged in the units, and it came out to that cost.
Okay.
And so if it came out to $52,000, I wouldn't be looking to convince you otherwise. But because it came out underwards, thought it was at least worth a conversation.
And because that algorithm is always changing, that price can go up or down.
No. So for the moment, and let's say this as well, if you like this program, if you think that being locked into the maintenance where we would be able to just run the plant as if it is ours essentially, if you like it, we can do a 5-year maintenance agreement and I will give you the cost of what that looks like, and it will stay that pricing regardless of who gets elected, what happens with the economy, et cetera. We're locked into those prices.
So on the $30,000 budget then, any work that would be done out of that $30,000 is presented as a work order and you're authorized to do that work before it happens then? Or how does that?
It'd be just like we do right now. It'd be a pool of money we have set aside in the budget. Anything over $10,000, I need to ask you for permission to fix. Anything under that, Matt says yes. Anything under $1,500, I say yes, which is pretty much their service call just showing up.
But if we don't spend any of the $30,000
It just
this year,
sits
it's
there.
still in
That
the
is your-
budget?
that
It
is
sits
your-
there. It's a
Okay.
budgeted item.
And that was your recommendation the first year, just to see?
It was per Jacob's request
Okay.
to do that.
Okay.
Again, I would say it will be close or under what is probably needed by the end if we truly wanted to replace and repair things as they need to be done, to set expectations.
The biggest worries I have of it is every service call, every mobilization is X amount of dollars. Coming back and forth, they're not here in town. If someone's not here at American Packaging or Enerpac, they're not here close by. There are a lot of very finicky things that seem to be happening in that plant where we've had multiple calls back and forth. I mean, we've spent, I want to say, over $4,000 on a service call from previous manufacturers or vendors to make repairs on things that still don't work. So we're calling them back time and time again, and, you know, even if we have an issue with the thermometer that's not kicking on a fan when the temperature gets above a certain degree in one of the control rooms, well, that's a service call. Well, how much is that gonna cost, you know? That adds up after time. And that might be a bulk of what our actual time and materials ends up being, is just the mobilization and service call fee.
One important thing to say is if we come out for a call and we didn't get it right, it's warranted. We warranty, the parts are always warranted for a year, that's typically manufacturer, but Bassett has their own parts warranty in the event that the vendor does not provide that, which is a year. And then something else that's unique is we have a 1-year labor warranty on everything that we do. So while there could be callbacks, they typically aren't common, that cost is covered. That is more unique to Bassett because sometimes the part may be covered, but the labor to come and replace that part may not be. And so,
We're actually seeing that right now with our vac truck that we just paid almost $700,000 for. Was not set to the factory specs on the hose and the bladder that controls the suction on the end of the bladder. We were using it to hydro excavate, and 3/4 inch gravel actually plugged up the hose, ripped the hose, and even though, because the bladder was not set at 90 PSI, it was only set at 20 PSI, which is what caused the failure. McQueen, who we bought the Vector truck from, is saying that it's not covered by warranty. We owe them $8,900. And they've been here 4 times to fix the truck since it's been delivered.
I have a quick question, kind of getting back to the maintenance and costs we've gone through the recent past. So we've got, as part of the presentation a little bit further down, the 3-year history, and I believe you prefaced this whole discussion tonight with the fact that history is incomplete.
Correct.
Okay, so I have a question about it. We have wide-ranging costs, right? 2022 was like $1,960. Right, the following year's 95,000, maybe that's the year we did the boilers.
Correct.
very likely.
And then this year, we're at like 22.4. So where do you think the gap is in that historical knowledge? Is it in 2022? Just trying to get an idea of that trend. that cost
There's at
trend.
least $3,000 plus of invoices from '24 that we don't have from
Okay.
TAS. TAS, they just never got back to us. There was another vendor that we used that also did some work. And this also doesn't cover our inspections for our backflow preventers, which is what we pay a separate fee for. I believe that's close to $1,000.
Do you know how many vendors we've used in this, even just this 3-year period, 22, 23,
At
24?
least 4. At least 4.
So do
and
you
the
think that
record- the-
contributes to our issues?
I think it does, because a lot of the times it's, who can we get here fast enough? It's always an emergency. You don't have airflow, you can't go into a building. So who are we gonna get here fast enough? Well, I can't get here, they didn't answer the phone, well, they're on holiday and vacation because they're one vendor, or they're one technician's deer hunting up north. Now we're stuck doing nothing.
Well, maybe they have different processes as well. and maybe
Most
even
of the
philosophies,
companies
so-
we've used are pretty small.
Yeah.
So, and they don't have the guarantee of being there like
Okay.
we would have with Bassett. But I would say definitely in '22 and further back, those records are just not present.
Yeah, that's been an issue we're aware of anyway, so
Yeah.
I think something along these lines would mitigate that. When did
that's-
something get installed, so we
Yeah.
can plan for its maintenance, let alone its replacement?
And that's kind of why I threw out that $30,000 rough estimate, because it was about, I figured one boiler, 23,000, figure back on what we have to replace, seeing what I've seen. The intangibles are gonna be like the MCC replacements. If we find, duplicated breakers and such, that's gotta be switched out. We can't have that. That's just not code, period.
Maybe so to credit to Bassett, again, when you become a customer, you'll have full access to a web viewing tool where, of course, if you're interested to see it, but Jacob can share and Jeremy can share with you, they'll have full access to all of the invoicing, all of the billing, all of the open calls, all of the payment history, everything will be right there, so you'll be able to access that. We are the only ISO certified contractor in the state, and what that essentially means is we are held to a standard of record keeping, and that really comes from the ammonia division, because if you're not tracking, ammonia refrigeration is really just all test and inspect, and if you're not keeping paperwork trails and history of things, that is where you fall out of compliance. And then if somebody essentially walks into a room and dies from ammonia inhalation, then that's not documented. So that process has just been adopted through the rest of Bassett. So our paperwork and invoicing and accounting and everything is as airtight and as good as you will see from a company like ours. There are a lot of, as you can see, we're going to be a lot larger than maybe some of the other local vendors that are doing this work. But the idea in that is when you are paying more upfront, you're saving on the cost on the back end. And then, of course, saving on the time, the headaches, the response calls, et cetera. Those are the things that we're also looking to, because there is a cost to those things. There is a cost to their wastewater operator now working on an HVAC unit when they should be working on effluent. And so there is a cost associated with that. I have what we call a system analysis, because Jacob had said you don't have a lot of historical costs. This tool is essentially designed to benchmark costs based off of the size of your facility, the size of the equipment, the age, et cetera. That I just want to be cognizant of time. But I could walk through with you, and we can basically look at a facility like yours and what a typical year of cost would look like. Do we have time, and are we okay to do that? And I'm happy to go through it with you. It won't take too long, but
Sure.
okay. First off, is this visible, or I don't know if, are we able to actually dim the lights, and maybe we could use this one, it's a bit larger. I don't know if that's an option to do
I
that.
could probably see that. I can't see that at all, really.
That one is a little tough to see.
Looks like David's on.
One place we operate lights, right? We don't need it.
I will do my very best to talk through it with you too, so that there's an understanding. So basically you size equipment by its capacity. In the top left corner is 6,329,194 BTUs. That is your heating equipment and how it is sized, okay? That's the very top left box. The bottom number is 6 tons of cooling. There's not a lot of cooling in this plant. And so it's just 6 tons of cooling. That's essentially like 2 units that you have at your house, okay? There's an average cost through the area of what it takes per penny to essentially take care of units. And so given costs have been high as of late, inflation and et cetera, we like to use, it's really either 1 penny or 2 pennies per BTU, essentially is what you put in there. On the tonnage, $2,300 per ton. You could use that equation as well if you needed to replace a unit at your house, for example. If it was a 3-ton unit, multiply it by $2,300, you're looking to spend about $12,000 to replace your home HVAC, which is really unfortunate because I bought a house not 10 years ago and it was about $3,000. So it's really climbed. So this brings us a total of $225,000 is really what your full plant equipment for HVAC, if we had to replace it all, it'd be about $250,000. That's what that equation comes out to. Additionally, included in that, I've got $85,000 here. $85,000 represents non-cooling equipment or non-heating equipment. So exhaust fans, supply fans, the unit heaters, the hot water unit heaters, because they don't heat themselves. The boilers do the heating, but there's still a cost to do those. I've kept that conservative. If you total all of your exhaust fans, makeup air units, and unit heaters, I only did $1,000 per each unit. What's the cost to replace an exhaust fan, though? $3,000 to $5,000. So I was attempting to be very conservative on this
Are the
cost.
water pumps included for the boiler
Yes.
installation?
Yes, the pumps for the boilers are included. At wastewater plants, we avoid the pumps for the process itself because we think that's the operator's job, right, to take care of that stuff. So in total, $250,000. Non-maintainable parts adjustment, there's 10% of the units that we just can't maintain. The shell of the unit itself, for example, on a boiler, just a big metal box, you can't maintain it. The piping that's hooked up to the units, you can't maintain those things. So we don't account for 100% of that cost, we account for 90%. Remaining useful life of the equipment. So the equipment on site, it's at least 35 years old in a lot of cases, with the exclusion of all the new equipment, which is basically 5 boilers and 2 air handling units. Everything else is original to the plant. So we're past our expected life expectancy on all of the equipment that hasn't been replaced at this point. It's not designed to do a negative number. Typically, I would do expected useful life, which would be 25 years or something, versus current age. But if I do that, it comes out with a negative number and then not. So I've put in 2 negatives for if you're able to just see here on these 2 boxes, -20 and -35, because we need a positive number here of 15 years to make the equation work. You multiply the $250,000 by 90% of the adjustable parts adjustment, things you can't maintain, divide that by the remaining useful life to get a positive number, and it comes out to about $13,000 per year is what we should expect, just a regular year where things are working well, of equipment that we just need to replace at this point. We need $13,000 on the budget just to replace things that are going to fail due to age and time and et cetera. So I know it's difficult to see and even a little bit difficult to follow, but does that all make good sense, really? Total cost of value of equipment, and what we'd expect out of replacement costs are really the 2 big takeaways there.
Insurance adjustment calculation.
Yes, it kind of is. We don't hang our hat on energy, so I don't typically fill this out, but if you're maintaining a plant well, you're saving money, right? Things are running efficiently, there's cost savings there. I can send this template to you and you can actually play around with it if you're interested in doing that, but I like to leave it blank because I don't want to look as though I'm trying to find dollars that you can't essentially calculate. It's very difficult to say you hired Bassett and you saved $20,000 in electrical costs, right? That would be difficult to do. Contracted services, we come back to the $250,000 for your total system cost. I've gone with the higher number. I can go with the lower number, but with inflated cost, 6 to 8% of your total equipment value is around what your contracted services should be for total cost, which comes out to $18,000. If we're doing a quarterly maintenance agreement, I've suggested a semi-annual maintenance agreement is what we've all talked about, which is essentially half of a quarterly agreement, which is $9,000. The expected cost for a quarterly agreement would be around $18,000. So we're right on pace with that. Parts and materials cost, these are just maintainable items, belts and filters and so on. However, on this one, we can put 0 because you guys are actually doing the filters. And truthfully, there are not a lot of filters on site. They're just in the air handlers and they actually stay very clean. So there's not a lot, and we left that to your team, and that will save dollars versus paying a journeyman technician $150 an hour to change filters, right? We want to be smart about that approach. We, however, will do the belts because that's a technical item that needs to be done correctly. Another thing we could apply cost to if we wanted to capture it is in-house staff. How much money are we actually spending on in-house operators to work on HVAC equipment? That is a cost that really should be captured. Again, we can put a dollar amount here if we feel that we need to do it. Cutting POs is another savings that's going to come into place if we do the full coverage agreement, because now it's a full coverage agreement. If a motor fails, we don't even have to ask for permission. We just replace it. If we're on a T&M basis, he's got to then come through, do the process, speak to him, speak to somebody else, and so on. It is a cost. It's how much? $100 an hour, $150 an hour to essentially have those conversations. It does cost. And so there are some facilities that cut POs for every single repair, and they total it up, and they've spent $30,000 in time by the time they've cut POs at the end of the year. And that's one reason they switched to the full coverage, because it's just turnkey, and we do it. Expected costs. So this is what you'd really like to see here. On a system like yours for $250,000, your expected cost on a built-up system, that is going to be boilers, chillers, air handlers versus big packaged rooftop units you would see on the top of a Walmart, for example. 4% of your total maintenance costs, so about $9,000 a year in major repairs and component replacement is what you would expect. Okay? So this will all total up at the end, so you'll see it. Lost productivity, again, difficult to put a number on this, but if something fails and it costs time, or it costs money, or it costs an unhappy citizen in town, then the costs associated with that. If I forward through to the summary, to here for the full coverage option. So basically, top number, equipment replacement, $13,523. That's what you would expect on an annual basis to do equipment replacement. Contracted services, $18,000 is what the average cost would be. In your example, it would be $9,000, so we could do the math either way in that case. But this is just to really, let's say, maintain the equipment as if the manufacturer were the one signing the maintenance contract, right? And then for major repairs, $9,000. Your expected cost for contracted services, for maintenance and for repairs, $40,500 is what an average year would look like based off of data that we have together. So I'll pause there. Any questions? I hope that was helpful.
So how do you make money?
I suppose on a wastewater plant, they don't make money, right? They only cost money.
Did you have a question earlier, Sandy?
Yes. First of all, I have two questions. One is, if it's, I don't understand how we got from the 40,000 to the 37,000.
So the 40,000 is the expected cost. The 37,000 is the number that we've come together on with our calculations to be able to maintain the equipment. The 37,000 is the full coverage agreement cost. So I apologize for it not being the exact number, but that is the full coverage agreement.
I guess that's what I was asking. You're gonna lose $3,000 per year.
Theoretically, it could be the case, but we're very good at maintaining the equipment. That's the idea, is that we are wise enough to be able to take care of the stuff and to bring it to life and to continue to maintain it and to keep those costs from going away, especially because your largest costs are coming from major repairs and replacements. If we can prevent having to do those replacements, that's where we make that money back, essentially.
And then the second question I had was, Jacob, when I added up and did an average of the numbers that you put together for the last 3 years, I come out to about 40,000. So we're all in the same ballpark here.
Sure.
And that's not complete.
Thank you.
I want to be sure to set strong expectations. Again, in the first year and the second year, no one's going to go through the equipment like we will. And so if you're not fixing things, you're not spending money, but that doesn't mean those costs weren't there. And so in these first couple of years, the dollars are going to, well, in the first year, it's going to be there in fixing and replacing everything. The idea is in the full coverage in the next, in the second and third year, that we're able to shelter from those costs at that point. We're in this for the long haul as well. Creating customers for life is what we're here for. We're not trying to be here for 3 years and then go from there. We want to do such an incredible job that the full coverage agreement is so turnkey and easy and allows these guys to just do their jobs that they can put it on the shelf and we can essentially adopt your HVAC portfolio, and now they can focus on what they're doing and you're doing it at a capped cost to manage your risk. Again, if we get in and we see that after, we extend it in years 3 and 4, those continue to drop, that's not a good partner to continue to do that to you. We want to have those conversations and change the maintenance agreement. But given expected costs and what it would just cost, even if we were doing all of the maintenance at $40,000, it could make good sense to stick with that. But we'll see.
Yeah, and we need to look at the future as well. This is like an insurance policy. So we have the wastewater plant we're focusing on right now, trying to get that squared away with the maintenance program. We have 2 water plants. One, we're most likely going to have to move away from and build a new. New standards are going to be a lot more stringent for air handling inside the facility with the chemicals than we currently have. If we have an on-site laboratory, that laboratory is going to have to be maintained within 3 degrees Celsius of a set temperature. So we have a lot of opportunity to get us to a point where our expenses are going to be less when we start incorporating the rest of our facilities in the community into one entity and one maintenance plan, the cost will, per unit, will eventually go down. It's like having a insurance policy that has 10,000 people on it versus 1,000 people. It's gonna be less.
My only response to calling an insurance policy is, I don't think anyone really enjoys insurance because you pay a lot of money and get nothing for it.
Right.
In this case, not only is it an insurance policy where it's capping your costs, but we're also doing the maintenance, and you're going to have units and pieces that are going to be replaced. The art museum, for example, was a $34,000 maintenance agreement. 5 months into that agreement, they had 2 elevator rooms that both condensing air conditioning units. They both failed, $17,000. So right in that one repair, their budget disappeared. And so the full coverage agreement fixed both of those units. We took on the $17,000, and that was it. And that's part of the game, and the initial part is when we're getting into a facility that we're just starting in and we've never been in and we've never maintained, year 1, we're going to probably lose. But then in year 2, hopefully we flatline, and then year 3, we start to be on a nice equal course where now this partnership is really churning well. And again, if it's not, there are lots of other alternatives. Canceling the contract, changing the type of the contract, adjusting to only do certain units even. If it's only certain units that are giving us issues, we can do that. This is a fully customizable program that we can go through to right fit for what's going to be best.
I was going to ask that question, actually, like if we start getting new equipment in certain facilities, and it's brand spanking new,
Absolutely.
you know, whether we have to worry about maintenance on that for the first couple of years, or that can be adjusted in the program.
Great question.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, we'll do that where, even in examples where we do large equipment replacement, and in the first year, we'll just put that unit on regular maintenance because it has all the warranties in place. So you're saving dollars on the maintenance costs in that first year, because why would we put a full coverage agreement on a brand new unit?
Yeah. I'm not really clear on what your recommendation was, Jacob, because I didn't watch the last meeting on whether we want to go with the semi-annual maintenance program, because my understanding from that benefit would be is that we would have everything maintained with the $9,000, and if nothing else goes wrong, we've got $30,000 in the budget that could be pushed to the following year. But if we go with the combo GPM, everything's covered, but if we don't need any repairs, we're spending $37,000 regardless, correct?
Right.
Okay.
The only thing that I would guess I could say we would really look into is how many of the exhaust fans are we gonna need to replace? Right now, I can count at least 4, just off the top of my head, without even having to look at notes. I know 4. So that's, what, $12,000, give or take, plus labor. So you're halfway through your $30,000, and you haven't even gotten into your PMing and your extra maintenance of your boilers and whatnot for the heating season.
I guess I feel like I'm buying a home warranty to a certain degree, but someone has looked at the home and is giving us a recommendation to a certain degree. I mean, I don't think you've been able to dig into everything with the inventory list. Maybe you have been, but that's kind of where I'm torn a little bit right now, is that if we know that there's been deferred maintenance on a lot of items, having the full coverage would give us a sense of, we don't need to worry about any of this stuff. It's going to be maintained or replaced, and it's going to happen within, you know, the budget of $37,000, compared to saying, maybe we can hold things together for the next year and see how things go. And maybe we'll have a little bit of money left over in the budget. So I'm kind of torn between those two areas right now, personally.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I was at as well. It's just that I know the most stressful thing for anybody that's an operator is the uncertainty. You get the phone call to come in because your equipment's failed. Now I don't have any air handling units in there. My H2S is now above limits. I can't even get into the equipment that I need to fix until I get the air moving in there. It's one less thing for someone that's called in the middle of the night to worry about. As an operator, I never liked that. I don't like that. And to be honest, there's a lot of things I think that we can improve on at the facility. And one of the biggest things we need is people, time, and hands. And those are 3 things we really don't really have that we can just add. they provide that. And they provide it pretty well.
One tremendous risk, because I do spend a lot of time in wastewater plants, and Jacob will attest to this, they are not growing operators on trees. And so you have someone who's working in a dangerous environment, or they're having to work on a unit that they're not trained to work on, they get very upset very quickly. And turnover is another cost that's not captured and all that, but if you lose someone, I mean, it could be months before you find someone who can actually do the work again. And that's where we take that burden off of them. The way that I designed it, because I am a consumer myself and I want to be a great partner, and the biggest thing I don't want to do is have to sit in front of you 3 years later and say, what did you sell us, right? The way I've designed this is, the first year, you don't have to actually decide on the full coverage right now. If you sign this agreement, we're still going to start as a semi-annual agreement with the $9,000 to start and the $30,000 budget. And that's going to give you an opportunity to work with Bassett and to see what it's like. And not only that, but to see that initial condition report. If it comes back to you and you say, holy cow, there's a lot of stuff that we need to fix here, then the full coverage agreement is going to probably make a lot of sense. If it looks like everything is manageable and not going to be maintained, we don't have to do the full coverage. We get to year 2, we can stick with the same program. So you don't have to decide right now. I wanted to design it in a way that you can start the partnership with Bassett on a time and materials basis, because that's what's going to be best for the city initially, because we're going to have to spend money in year 1 just making everything right. And then based off of that, you will feel much more well-informed on if you think a full coverage agreement is going to make sense. If we spend $60,000 next year fixing everything, you're going to say, I don't want to do that again. Let's do the $37,000. If you keep it under the 30, let's stick with the maintenance agreement. You and he will be able to read through it. You are fully within your right to make any changes that you would like. We are here to be a good partner, not to hold you to some contract. But this will give you a really great opportunity to have a case study as to what it's going to be like as we head into year 2, and if we make the change to full coverage or not.
Okay.
I think I really see the benefit of that piece right there, given the issues we have with historical data on
Right.
these systems and just on the plant in general. I like that approach.
I believe
It
you and I are
is-
gonna be on the same page with this. Was I would say we do the 9,000 plus the 30,000 time and material. We reassess with the assessment, which we'll have, August of next year, most likely.
Yeah.
We would have it in August. We reassess. We set a decision for September of next year, and we go from there.
Yeah. I encourage you to sign this version of it, because I promise the cost will change if we have to price it again next year.
Never be cheaper than now.
Yeah, it unfortunately just won't be. And so sign this version, it will lock the pricing and it will not change, but you will be able to make any changes that you like. You have me on record saying that the price will stay the same, and that if you decide to make a change, then we can just continue cruising along with what we're currently doing.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah, I really like the added benefit of one-stop shop, so to speak.
Sure.
You mentioned we have 4 vendors in the last few
Right.
years. I mean, again, just the inefficiencies that can breed from that scenario right there. We could mitigate future costs in some degree, I guarantee. I can't tell you what degree, but with having one vendor. And if we have an issue, it's not, well, I worked on this part of the system, your other vendor did that part, and so the tie-in's on theirs, not mine.
The saying there is one throat to choke.
Yeah.
One number to call. That's, David Gruber made a living off of that.
That is the
Right.
benefit, right, of having a primary and secondary technician. It is their plant, they will get to know the plant, and that's why we have that full meeting with me, with the project manager, the service manager. Everybody knows about the plant, so we're treating this as a team, not just their guy in the truck.
And this person will obviously know that if he shows up when Jeremy's working, he better bring donuts.
Yeah. Actually, we love to bring donuts, I do. And there was one other thing I was gonna say, to close out on that, was, the donuts got me off track. Yeah,
Donuts do.
that's it. Oh, we have a 97% retention rate with customers. So 3%, and some of that percentage of the cancellation rate is just facilities that close or sell or change. So people stick with us, and that is a tremendous benefit to be able to work with someone like American Packaging or whoever it may be. we get to know the facility, it's hard to change away from that when we know it as well as the people who are on your payroll.
I mean, I can attest that Bassett saved the city of Brookfield over $200,000 in 1 year. They were about to put in a very large air handling unit that was extremely oversized. And the judgment of looking things through and saying, well, we've always replaced it in kind. We'll replace it in kind, the original design. Well, they forgot to take into effect that they took out 10 air handling units, but still wanted to put the same suction unit in the building. We couldn't open the doors. So Bassett ended up saving that city over $200,000 in a brand-new unit.
Another benefit of being a customer is you have access with 20 in-house engineers, so whenever things come up with the plant that are gonna need to be revised, we can tap into that resource as well. And then, of course, as I said, the piping and the metal fab solutions too. So,
Air modeling is very helpful.
a lot of ancillary benefits.
All right, well, if we approve this contract, this is for next year, correct? So it would be budgeted in the operations and
Correct.
maintenance.
January 1 is what we have the data as.
All right. Any other questions?
So we locked in the 9,000, or we signed the $9,000 contract, and the 37,000 is locked in
3 years. It's a 3-year agreement.
for. Right.
We're flying in the dark a little bit, not having costs. A lot of times, a process that I actually work with is to collect the costs that Jacob attempted to collect, and then they'll provide that back to us and say, this is what you've been spending on an average year over the last 5, 10, 12. But we don't have that data, so we
Right.
have to fly in the dark as to what you have been spending. That's why we attempt to benchmark it the best we can. But I think the first year will give a lot of confidence as to what we do. And the same thing for us as well.
Right. Well, makes sense.
I'm not going to read through all the fine print here, but I guess I'll just ask the question, can the contract be amended after we initially sign it if something significant would happen next year? Because it looks like it automatically goes from one thing to the following 2 years is
It
going
would-
to the
it
full
would,
coverage.
but we'll come through back when budget season comes around for you
Okay.
to decide what to do.
Excellent.
And say, do we want to stick with this or not? And then for an amendment, I don't need 30 days' notice. It's only if we terminate the contract that we need the 30-day period for an amendment. Jacob would call me and say, hey, they want to go with the semi-annual agreement. Can you put that together? And then essentially, I don't have it here, actually, I do have it here. I have the semi-annual agreement that was provided to Jacob as well. That is that version. That one was also a 3-year contract. So essentially, we lock in the full coverage version of it. If you change your mind, we just switch to the semi-annual one and what that one would have looked like, which from a cost perspective for the projected years would be just down at the bottom here. Oh, I clicked on the wrong one. I apologize. We do 3%. Oh, I'm sorry. This is the correct one. This has your T&M budget built into it. So first year of the semi-annual is $9,036. The semi-annual, if in late next year got to a point you decided to go with that, would go from $9,036 to $9,312 to, it just ran away from me here, but to $9,312, and then a 3% incline from there. So we just do 3% escalators, but I will keep that version on record, that if we get to that point next year and you decide not to do the full coverage, Jacob has a copy of that right there.
Yes.
We will just tear up the other version and put that one into effect.
Just to recap, that version was $39,036 for year 1, $39,312 for year 2. In year 3, the $30,000 was dropped to $25,000 for a total of $34,988.
The 30,000 of that is your budget number.
Correct.
In that,
Yep.
correct. It will stay right around $9,000.
Okay. If we were to stay with that
If
program
we
and
decided
we
to go in
didn't
that
to the full-
direction,
Okay.
correct. We'll just terminate the full coverage version and go to the semi-annual. But I think let's collect the costs and just build a case for it, essentially.
Yeah.
If it makes sense, do it, and if not, then go to the other one, and we're still working together and everybody's happy.
So what do you think would be the appropriate action tonight, Matt, is to approve this contract?
Correction in terms of which option you want to select.
All right. Which I believe the proposal says the maintenance agreement with time and materials is what we're agreeing to.
The combo agreement, if I'm understanding,
Combo agreement with the ability to reassess in August of 2020.
it'll be the version that was in the folder that was provided.
Okay, combination maintenance agreement with time and material accounted for.
Correct.
1 year maintenance only pricing $9,036, and then we'll be budgeting the $30,000 in-house.
In year one,
All right.
and then, just to be clear, in year two, go to the full coverage option if it makes sense, but that would be the version you would go with for now. And then we'll amend in September.
All right.
Yes.
All right, I will make a motion that we enter the agreement for the combination maintenance agreement with Bassett Mechanical for the maintenance and time and material in the amount of $9,036 for 2024, and that we budget $30,000 to go along with that for the time and material portion.
I'll second that motion.
All right, you have a motion and a second to approve contract maintenance agreement with Bassett Mechanical, in the amount of $9,036, and that we budget $30,000 for 2024 for the time and material portion. Any discussion on the motion? There's no further discussion or questions. Would you take a roll call, Matt?
Holm,
Aye.
Rule,
Aye.
Hamel,
Aye.
Kurtz.
Aye.
All right, motion passes. Thanks for all your help, Jason, in
Of
walking us
course.
through that.
Thank you. I look forward to working with
A lot of
everyone.
information.
It is, I know, it is a lot, but I'll be here the full step of the way, so.
All right,
If you need one to sign, they have multiple copies of it, so. Thank you. Thanks, everyone, for your time. I hope I was efficient. Okay,
all right, thank you.
very good. And then, we'll probably want to get this one turned again. Okay.
All right, we can move on to new business number 5 then, which is the Eggers Imprints Shared Savings Loan. There was a little information in our packet about this.
Yeah, that was the shared savings loan that they requested with the city through WPPI. Their work has completed, and they are requesting the check, which is in the checks that are in your packet.
I think further on there, it explains how that was, all that work was
Yeah,
verified.
it was verified, and then monthly payments and how it's all broken down by Anna
Perfect.
in the back page of that. Yeah.
All right.
Pretty self-explanatory.
All right, what, do we need any action on this then?
Just acceptance of the, that it's completed.
Anyone want to turn that into a motion?
No, you don't really need to, it's just that the work has been completed, so the check is ready to be cut. More information than anything else.
All right.
So we don't need a motion
No. We already signed to agree upon it when they signed the contract, so.
Okay, all right.
We've already allocated the money.
Yeah, it's already set and ready to go for them. It was just information to say that they're done, checks being cut, payments start now.
Okay. All right, we can move on to number 6 then, which is the Columbus wastewater treatment quick ZymeD case study for the Aquafix.
Yes, this is actually pretty interesting information. I believe we had a conversation when we started this that I assumed we would get to about 60% reduction in solids. If you go to the conclusion on the last page, it is 59.85% reduction.
Pretty close.
I'd say that's good enough for government work. It was an excellent study. Now that we have changed the process of how we are actually using our extended aeration basins, we're using them as a two-stage, essentially a septic tank. We're filling one, pulling from the other, letting them equalize. We are seeing even greater reduction and greater quality of the decant we're getting off of the actual solids. So it's actually, now that we've combined both sides, it's stepping up the process and it's doing much better. So we're gonna see leaps and bounds, I believe, in this, adding this to our plant moving forwards. And again, $17,000 a year for the chemical in comparison to building a $4 million dryer. You can go through the study. They did an excellent job with the data that I collected, put their own data together. It's pretty technical, but the proof's in the pudding in the conclusion. They were even surprised at how fast it worked and how efficiently it worked with the destruction of the actual organic solids. I'm very impressed. And this might actually be something that one of our operators could use to do a study for Wisconsin Wastewater Operators Association, do a presentation and get some credentials and some credits if they would like. I would assume that Aquafix would be willing to partner with them with that. But I recommend we just continue using the product. We fix it into the budget next year as one of our fixed chemical costs, and we keep moving forward with this process. I think it was leaps and bounds better than what we had, and I think it's pretty indicative of a good partnership with Aquafix, and we'll just keep it going.
Jacob, how much did heavy rains in the spring and early summer impact the study results?
They were actually extremely negative for the results. So the month of July, we could not actually waste enough material out of the plant. It was actually leaving the plant. So our process was we were putting a lot more water into our aeration basin, our extended aeration, than we were actually solids. So the destruction of this solids and getting the inventory down to actually maintain the plant with where we were, it was actually pretty remarkable considering that normal plant operations of wasting 7 times a night, so many thousands of gallons a day, we weren't actually able to do that. It was pretty much get out what you can when you can, and hopefully we have enough room to get by. Even with that, we reduced the actual cake to the field by over 500 cubic yards. That's a lot. I mean, that was only in 4 months' time, really. So if we had a normal year that we were just continuously prepped and ready for the wet weather events, we would have been in a lot better stages and better stability for us to actually work through it without having the huge hits of the rain and the I&I, which really was very detrimental to our plant. But this enzyme and the product of our solids process actually held pretty strong, which was actually pretty surprising. Even Aquafix was surprised with the influxes we had, how steady it was. There were some times where it got a little hairy, where we weren't able to get as much cake solids out of the sludge as we wanted to when we were pressing, but that's just the nature of the beast when you're working with sludge. I mean, sometimes you have those variances coming through and it just doesn't work out as well. One of the inhibiting factors we did see is the chemical that we add for our phosphorus removal, our hyperion. That goes into the splitter box out of our clarifiers where the sludge is taken out of. That is actually a coagulant, which is the same type of chemical that the polymer is, which is a flocculant. So they either work hand in hand or they work against each other. So we are actually having to add so much of the hyperion to remove phosphorus because of what was coming in the plant, and we were diverting the plant and splitting the plant in two. It was detrimental to us to even try to make solids out of the cake with the cake because of the fact that the polymer was not reacting anymore. So we had to do some remodification of the plant to figure out where we're going to add the phosphorus removal chemical to actually have it work in the plant and not be detrimental to this process. And then we figured that out, and things were back to normal. So, a lot of workarounds and a lot of discoveries were happening by everybody that was new, and now we have a study going on with where we're gonna place our chemicals for phosphorus removal. We're gonna try and put in a system that's going to be regulating that and monitoring that in real time, where it'll adjust the chemicals in real time based on the flows and the concentrations throughout the plant. Basically, we're gonna try and bring the plant up to modern times.
One question I have, in the study, it talks about how the south digester received 36, basically 36,500 more pounds of sludge. Was that part of, was the reason for that increase to the test digester because of our weather issues?
It was because we were having to add as much as possible in there, and it was more water than actual solids. But the thing is that the north side, which was not getting the chemical or the enzyme, was not settling and decanting as fast as the south. So we were actually able to keep adding
That's
to that
what I was
side.
assuming.
And we were able to
Okay.
basically compound it into that side, which was, the destruction is actually miraculous how much it actually took out as fast as it did. Within 1 day, and not even a gallon and a half of that enzyme added the first day, the clarity of the decant went from, 5 milliliters, you're down to 30. I mean, it was almost instantaneous. It was amazing.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. That
Yeah.
was my inference, was that it was working so well.
Right.
You had to do something with what you
So
need
what-
to deal with.
If we
so
weren't
add
doing
it
this,
to
what
the
would we have
test.
done? I mean, that's
Right.
really the question. Is if we weren't doing this on this side of that plant, what would we have been able to do?
Mm-hmm.
Nothing. We would have been running the belts 24/7. We would have had snot coming out into the road.
Well, at first I was like, oh my gosh, we're doing a test and a control. Why are we great? But it works.
Yeah.
And it actually shows the efficacy of the whole process. So
Right.
Thank you.
Yep.
So if it performed that well outside of normal circumstances, it's probably going to continue to perform better than expected in the future.
Correct. That would be our expectations. I mean, granted, there's gonna be some variations in the plant that comes and goes with seasons and whatnot, but I do believe it's gonna be the best application for us with the extended aeration process that we have. If we ever decide to go with anaerobic digestion, it would also be something that we could also add to our influent, so if we decide to increase our ability to take in, trucks. So our sludge haulers come in, they dump right now, it goes right into the headworks. We want to start putting that in a storage tank so we can batch feed it into the plant. We can start adding this enzyme in, start breaking it down before it even gets into the plant. It's not as big of a hit. And then we go, or we say we want to put it directly into an anaerobic digester, and then that decant that comes off the digester comes in. We add this, because a lot of the stuff that comes out of a digester is unsoluble and it doesn't really like to settle. This will start breaking it down because it's still organic, but it's not going to settle. So this would actually be another thing that we could add to after the digestion process if we decided to go that route. However, the plant engineering is designed, it gives us other options. But yeah, I think it was an excellent case study, and I know Aquafix is very happy. I know we're very happy because it saved us a lot of time and a lot of money.
Yeah, I greatly appreciate your suggestion. I'm really glad we went through this study because
Thank you.
I think most likely from the data we received, we found a much more efficient and economical solution to our
Yeah.
issue. Thank you.
That is for sure. And it can be utilized with other processes, and it's not going to impede on anything. That is, it's not going to cost us anything really to use it. I mean, yeah, it costs money to put it in there, but to run it and have it go through, it's not cost us anymore. A dryer is going to keep costing and maintenance, everything else, and time, and
Purchase product and place it.
yeah. I mean, just literally set it and dump it in, you're good to go.
So the case study's over now, but if we continue on with Aquafix, is there any sort of like a annual or semi-annual check-in with them to make sure that things
They're
are
going to
still-
keep grabbing samples.
Okay, great.
They come out once a week and they grab samples just to see how it's going.
Okay.
Because this is still a case study for them.
Okay,
Because this is something they would like to expand into the market, and actually, the more data they can grab and the more consistent data they can grab, the better it'll be. like I said, these results are astonishing. They want to see that actually see that continuously throughout the year. And if they can see that, well, they're going to be thanking us a lot because they're going to be making a lot of money. Let's just say that. Because this results are, any small plant that does not have a process that's limited by size, space, time, all you have to do is add something to it that's going to use the air and be mixed. And it's going to keep breaking down an organic process without having to add any more mechanical separation. I'm sorry, that's a miracle. I mean, that's basically doing what God intended nature to do, just a heck of a lot faster.
Maybe we can talk to them about a sponsorship or something like that, since we got in
Yeah.
early.
Put their name on the water tower.
Yeah, get a logo on the
We're gonna look
wastewater
like
treatment.
NASCAR.
Yeah. So this is just stays cut, or case study results, so we don't need to
Yep,
take any
it was
official
just a
action.
discussion topic I wanted to share with everybody since everybody was here, and I was asked, well, can I order more chemical? I'm like, yeah, you can order more enzyme. We have to get some in the plant. Or 3 barrels are almost up.
And you estimated 17,000 annual cost
Yeah,
for this?
that's about it.
Wow, that's significant.
Yeah, because
Thank you.
once we go past the inoculation, we're adding, what was it, 3 quarts a day?
As opposed to a $4 million piece of equipment that's gonna need,
And then
Attention
you're still
and
probably gonna have to
costs.
landfill the materials that come out of it because it's gonna be
Right.
full of whatever.
yeah, no, the reduction was what we were looking for.
Yeah, I mean, it's up front too, so it's not like you're having to dry what you've already created. This is reducing what you're actually going to create. So the savings are, almost exponential. Yeah, I'm very impressed. I'm very happy with it.
Great news, thanks. All right, we'll move on to number 7 then, which is the hospital switches. Looks like there's an extended lead time on the switches required for the completion of the hospital expansion project, and the electrical utility would like permission to place the order for 3 switches totaling $69,800, and the project has been figured into the 2025 budget.
Yep.
And this expense would be accounted for in that budget.
This will be accounted for in the budget and will be reimbursed by the hospital with the capital improvement plan. That is part of their fees that they'll be paying back once we get the project all in place.
Okay.
We have started the actual design process with them. They have asked us to step up the process and get everything set and squared and give them a set price. So we now have everything we need for that, and we'll start doing that next week. Well, in 2 weeks, because Dalton's on a fishing trip next week.
I have one question on that.
Yeah.
On the Irby quote, item 1 was for quantity 1, item 2 was for quantity 3. So are there 3 switches or 4 switches?
I believe there was only 3, so unless that was a mistake on there, or it was a mistake that I was told, but I believe there's only 3 that were needed.
Yeah, I see that as well, Brooke.
Yeah.
Because it says, it's confusing, $23,300
Right.
each, quantity 3.
Yeah, and I do believe it was only 3, but I can do a quick calculation and add the extra 23,300,
Yeah, that's,
so that would be 9, 1, 2, 3.
see, so I do read
100 and-
my packet.
On your, got that on your phone even, that's impressive.
103, 102, 3. 103, 2, something like that.
Well, it would be only 3 to come up to the 69,000.
Yeah, but it's 3 of the, there's $100 difference for the item 1 or item 2. So we need 3 of these ones. So I just need to add one more.
3 of the first ones?
3 of the second ones.
Okay.
So it'd be 23, 300. So 93, 1. Yep.
I think if you do 2
Verification,
of the
is it-
second one and 1 of the first one, you can come up to your 69.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Okay.
but if I go 3 of the third, or the second one, and 1 of the first one, that comes up to 93,100.
I guess.
It says,
My question
yeah.
was just, it did,
Which are we doing?
yeah, what are we doing?
Yeah, because the agenda item says 3 switches totaling
Right.
69,000.
And I was told 3 switches, but he may have been misunderstood because there has been a lot going on. It might be actually 4 switches. But I really don't think we can wait till next month to have that taken care of.
Well, I guess it's getting reimbursed, so I just don't know how we formed the motion without having a firm dollar number, I guess.
I would request 93,1.
Right. Not to exceed.
I'll
Yes.
just add, that's the safe motion here, and obviously if Jacob goes back and finds out that it's the 68.8 number, then obviously I don't think he's going to order an extra one. He's going to order what they need, and
Correct.
he's got authorization to go up to the 4 if that's what's needed.
Correct.
I'd make a motion then for the purchase of the electrical switches for the hospital expansion project, not to exceed $93,100 from Irby.
I will second.
Motion and a second to approve the purchase of the electrical switches from Irby not to exceed $93,100. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, could you take a roll call for us, Matt?
Handler,
Hey.
Curtis,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
Rule.
Aye.
Motion passes. Move on to the Columbus Utilities Capital Improvement Plan.
Yes.
Trying to look to refine this before budget time, I'm assuming.
Yeah, this was, I finally was able to get the water data for the water department that I wanted to share with everybody before we rolled out the actual budget for next month. But this is the capital improvement plan. First page is the, vehicles, I do believe. Yep, all the vehicles and all the equipment for vehicles. It shows the water and electric combined, and then the wastewater on there. The, let's see, where is it? Wastewater hoist truck. So the hoist truck for the wastewater, that is actually, the total price of that is gonna be around $149,000. So I was a little over on the estimate. We got that price through Lynch, Truck Center down in Waterford. We get a $6,000 rebate instantly back if we go with a 2023 model for the truck versus a 24 or 25. They have it in stock. They'll allocate it for us to be built with a lead time of 8 months on the hoist in the box for that truck, so. And that'll then house everything that those guys need to go out and sample, do maintenance, and pretty much run the collection system and the plant. A mobile toolbox. They're actually very tickled to have it because now they're going to have everything in one spot. They don't have to chase it around the plant in the back of the truck.
Is there gonna be some bonding involved in these? I'm assuming.
So I'll just paraphrase my comments, and I'll share with you what I've shared with Jacob. We've sent all this information to Ellers, and Ellers will be doing financial forecasting. As I've shared with Jacob, his 5-year CIP is likely a 15-year CIP in terms of our rate structure and what we can afford. And so when Ellers comes back and does the financial analysis and kind of shares what's reality in terms of rate structure, then it's going to become an exercise of prioritization. You're looking at a little over $52 million over the next 5 years for the utility combined with this plan, with a high mark of 16 million in 2028, with a significant amount of that for a new water plant that will clearly require a lot of work in
Grants.
terms of how to fund it with grant programs and future bond issue and all of those kind of components that go into making that. But the takeaway should be, for the first time in my knowledge, we've got a pretty comprehensive look at what our issues are. And really the next steps are prioritization and fitting this into a financial model that can make sense for our taxpayers and ratepayers of the city. And that's really where the hard work is going to be. And it's not just the utility, but we've done this across the board for the city, and there's going to be some hard decisions on what those priorities are and how to make this into a workable plan. It's great that we've got a list. It's also scary that we now have a list, because now you know what, where we're headed and what the issues are.
Some of the saddest thing is the water department, some of the wastewater, that was already done years ago. And it was just sat and never touched. And now that the chickens have come to roost, I guess you could say, we have to start finding nests for them, and we're running out of places to put it.
Yeah, it's scary numbers for sure, but I think the scariest scenario is where we were
Unknown is scarier
a
than
couple
actually
years
knowing
ago.
where you're at.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, I totally take that point, but yeah, I think this at least gives us some light to try to see through this forest and find the end.
Hopefully everybody has been to the cardiologist and passed their recent exams, because the details of this and the numbers are quite staggering.
Yeah, a great example of this is, as you look into, I think this is page 2 of the CIP, the second line is complete the 4.16 kilowatt conversion at a total cost of 3.3 million. You'll notice we've been doing that over the course of a number of years.
20 years.
This is a different concept of, let's get it done, let's contract it out, let's borrow for it. That might be a strategy. We may have to continue to do this the same way and structuring it over years. And you could look at a lot of what's in the document in that light, right? This is best case scenario. This is doing it in 2025 for 3.3 million will be the cheapest we can do it for. Because it'll only get more expensive with inflation, growth costs, that sort of thing. But you then have to look at the reality of everything else and how we fit that in a financial model.
You also have to remember that money that we've been using to piecemeal this for the past 20 years and will continue to do for the next 20 plus, that's all going to be sitting in an account gaining interest now instead of being spent every year, if we were able to get it all done at once, bond for it. It's a good business plan. We had some assistance with the folks at Forrester Electric and WPPI to walk us through it. And the electrical plan especially is very much a business plan, as well as the wastewater and water, The water one's more of a, how long do we have necessity-wise and feasibility-wise with Plant 1? We're kind of up against a rock and a hard spot right there, especially right now with our current situation, which I'll clue you guys in with later. But yeah, the can is no longer there. We've kicked it down to the lid, and it's in the gutter.
So at this point, once you get some of that forecasting back, then you guys will be able to maybe formulate more of a prioritization and then present that to us?
Correct.
But this is
and then
kudos, thank you. This
then
is
the
a
grant
good start.
process, and we try to figure out what we can do, who we can lean on to help us with grants, and figuring out where the money can come from to take the burden off of the ratepayers, the city as a whole. Try to get some extra help with infrastructure and funding. I mean, we can't do it by ourselves. There's no way. I don't even know if the city can actually afford the interest of this moving forward by itself, which is you know, that's the reality for any community in the United States right now, except for the ones that are massively expanding like Las Vegas and whatnot. They're basically making money hand over fist.
Well, those communities they're able to cover their new development costs, but they're struggling with maintaining
Correct.
their existing infrastructure
Yep.
too.
So there's no action required here, basically just an update on where you are in the
Just,
process.
here's reality.
It's good to get all the numbers on a piece of paper, and I'm sure that's probably gonna change 6 months from now too, or,
Basically, we're gonna use, as I told Jake Tanner about this with the water department, I said, you know, Jake, this is basically gonna be something we look at every 6 months.
Yeah.
This is a PM. We have to look at where we're gonna be in a PM program. Where are we at? What died? What's gonna make it? What seems to be doing okay? We risk to reassess. It's gonna be something it's gonna be a constantly fluid, moving document. I'm not gonna probably clue you guys in on everything where it's at every 6 months, because you get annoyed with it and probably start freaking out, but you'll definitely be aware if there's any major changes that we go about with it.
Well, it'll be nice to try to get to a spot where we have fewer emergency requests for funding, because, you know, we've been able to predict replacement, and we've known how long something's been in the ground or in operation, and when's the last time it was touched, and those kinds of things that are
The
extremely
uncertainty
important with
is
this.
getting old.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of logistics and stuff to keep track of, so I'm glad we're getting a better record.
Yeah, well, we're definitely gonna keep working on it too. A lot of work that's been done this year, that's for sure, with all three utilities. I cannot commend the gentlemen and the ladies in the office enough for how much they've had to put up with this year. I think, if Jake didn't have such short hair, he'd have it all pulled out by now. But, I think we're definitely gonna be in a better spot moving forwards. It's hard to have a unified team when you have no direction of where that team is heading. And I think having a direction, even though it might be grim, is still a direction.
Well, you need a map
Yeah.
to have direction.
Correct.
So you're mapping right now, essentially, so thank you for your efforts. And
Yeah.
it will pay dividends.
I do agree,
is that the opening to your utility director's report?
if you'd like.
The grim opening?
Yeah. I didn't have anything written down. It's been kind of a hectic week. I was sick a couple days, and then today the guys were actually all working in the Cage Alley and the Town Tap Alley, where they were able to do conversions. The water electric department, where they're working together, they were able to get 100 meters off of substation 1 and totally converted over. So congratulations. That has been a month in advance and month of working to get that finally done. We've also been working with getting the hospital quote finalized and getting everything ordered and in place. Conduit, wire, fittings, all the intangibles we need, but getting all that straight and ready to go. Next week, MEUW will be on site doing training with the electrical department. The gentlemen are starting their schooling again, so they'll be gone once every month. Somebody will be gone, rotating through, going to classes. Wastewater, we have interviewed, and the gentleman that was selected has accepted the position as the operator B, the wastewater plant. So that plant is now going to be completely fully staffed as of October 7th. The gentleman is actually currently the lead operator for West Salem, Wisconsin. He is moving here to be closer to his kids. So he was tickled pink when he had the opportunity to come up. So he was more than happy to accept the job, and I called him to congratulate him and say thank you. And he's on vacation in the Yellowstone National Park, and I said, please don't pet any buffalo. I don't need that. But yes, Merle will be starting on October 7th. He's a fully licensed operator. He has over 20 years' experience. He has all his basic licenses, but he is gonna be fully licensed for our facility. He can take his advanced test with his time. Basically, we'll just have to have him sign off on his current plant time, get all the information from there, and I'll sign off on it. He'll pass his advanced exam, and he'll be advanced in every subclass and license that we have at the plant. And he'll be relief for Peter if Peter ever decides to take a day off or go on vacation. We'll have an operator in charge that'll still be there and won't need to be me. So it's a good hire. It's a good fit. I think he'll do well with the team. I think everybody will be happy. As far as water department goes, we have been very busy with the street construction, replacements of hydrants and water testing with Dollar Tree. That has been a treat for the water department dealing with the Dollar Tree. So hopefully everybody enjoys that facility when it's up and running. Water plant one, we, as you know, when the reservoir was down, we had to do some emergency repairs on the cracks in the reservoir. The water that was in the reservoir was sent in for testing for VOCs. It did come back as positive for VOCs. So that means there are petrochemicals in the groundwater around Plant 1. It is a documented site already with the state of Wisconsin. Unclear where they actually came from, whether it be the canning facility or our facility, but they are present. Samples were taken, flushed, sampled again. We're waiting on direction from the DNR to see what we're going to be able to do with the plant by putting it back in service. We don't believe there will be anything in the wells. We don't believe the intrusion got down deep enough to actually get into our wells. They're pretty deep. But it is still kind of concerning to know that is what's present immediately under the ground and around the surface of that plant. That's disturbing. So, it's an industrial site. It's over 100 years old. It's almost expected, but still, it's not something you like to see. We did have to replace a water line over there. We had a hydrant, we were trying to flush and clean out the reservoir. We had to replace that line. It was very corroded, which is what prompted us to really do some investigation into what was actually going into the reservoir and what was coming out just by the way the water looked. But we're moving forwards. We're going to keep plugging away at everything, and hopefully we'll get that plant back online so we can start working on getting things set in Plant 2 and give it a break because it's been running pretty much 3 months straight supporting the city. Wanted to add that the water department, our operator Craig, he lost his father this past weekend, so I wanted to announce that we, give our condolences and wish him our best feelings and heartfelt prayers during this time for him and his family. It was unexpected, so he will be out tomorrow and the beginning of next week. So please have him in your thoughts. Moving forward,
Excuse me, Jacob,
yes.
before you go forward.
yes.
First of all, my condolences also to Craig's family. When you were discussing the Reservoir 1, that water never made it into the distribution system, correct?
No, the plant was never put online.
Thank you. That's what I
No.
wanted to confirm.
Yeah, we would not have even attempted to put it back online. We have to wait 10 days for the water samples to come back anyway, so. It is concerning though, because, how long was that well? How long was that cracked? We don't know. I mean, we would hope that it didn't intrude in when the pressure was equalized and the reservoir was full. But as soon as we relieved the water out of there, it filled right back in less than 3 days, up to about 6 to 8 inches. So that's quite a bit of water intrusion and through those cracks. That's concerning. But then again, it's a 80-year-old concrete. What do you expect? It's porous. It's basically limestone at that age. But yeah, moving forward, water department, we have some finish up the streets department work, street improvements. They're going to try and get some copper and lead services replaced, repaired. We've been doing some planning, trying to get everything ready for what we can do with Plant 2. Getting some hydrants painted. Jim's been running through getting those painted as fast as he can, sandblasted and cleaned up. Wastewater, we're gonna continue plugging away at the plant, getting it back and getting it ready for winter time, process-wise, and get everything squared away. Hopefully we'll be able to put something on the fields, but right now, there's really not much in the hangar, so that's good. That's actually pretty good news. We did test, do a trial on some front-end loaders, looking at ones that are a little heavier to allow us to actually scoop the material. The one that we've been borrowing from the DPW is a little light, and it doesn't like to push the material up and get it as high as we would like. Need one with a little bit more weight, a little more power to get underneath it and actually stir that material up and make the process a lot easier so you're not sliding around and, bumping into walls. So that's something we're looking into. If that was part of the capital budget, but that was also a rental program that might actually be able to be included into the capital project because of the work that's going to be done. We're changing the whole process of how we're going to get rid of the cakes, so it could all be added into one project. Seems to be a smarter way of doing it than just purchasing it outright. Electric department's going to continue catching up on everything they've been behind on because of all the emergencies and everything else. October, we'll be starting on the Transruptor project for Substation 3, as well as getting Substation 4, the transformer, all completely fixed. That'll be done before the Transruptor project, but we're just waiting on the parts to show up, and then we'll have that all taken care of here in October. Not sure exactly when, but it will be in October. Other than that, it's almost hunting season, and we're about to see a lot of vacations. And these guys, they need vacations. So that's pretty much all I have, other than the information here provided the MEUW, the WPPI mid-year energy report, the residential survey that was put out. And just for future agenda topics, to know that next month we'll be going over the operating budget and finalizing everything that we'll need for 2025. So thank you for your 2 hours.
I was wondering what the disclaimer for was at the bottom about the quorum of commissioners. Is that just,
I've added that as standard language on all of our agendas
We're getting fancy.
because that opportunity exists for that to happen.
you're talking about people that could be present here watching the meeting?
Correct.
Okay, I took it as like we couldn't take official action at
No,
our
no,
own
no, no,
meeting.
no, no, no.
Gotcha. Okay,
Calm down.
I appreciate that. No, I mean,
I'll
it's
present it
good
to
that
you.
we're evolving, but yes, I know exactly what that usually entails, so.
Yes, sending out the agenda in the packet through Municode, we ran into a little snag. Something I have to talk about with the IT from WPPI and then RIME next week. When I try to tag the hyperlink to send to you guys, it doesn't work.
I noticed that.
It only works if you're tied to the Wi-Fi or in the office on my phone or anything. As soon as I leave the building on Maple, it doesn't work. They do it in City Hall, it works for everybody. But for me, it won't work. I did the same process. So I think it's something with having the two separate networks again, which hopefully will be alleviating soon.
Got a big magnet in your pocket or something, maybe?
I wish. That'd be attractive then. Dad joke.
All right, so it looks like upcoming agenda topics will be review and approval of the 2025 operating budget. Any other suggestions for any upcoming agenda topics? Seeing none, anyone want to make a motion to adjourn? Since Molly's not here.
I'll stand in for Molly.
All right.
I will move to adjourn.
I'll second the motion.
Got a motion and a second to adjourn at 8:05 PM. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? We stand adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Jacob, I got one question. Yes, sir.